Section 2.6, Math 110. First, we want to talk about functions and what is f plus gx, f minus gx, and so on. And what you see here is f plus g of x means, as a matter of fact, you are taking these two and add together. So I have the solutions, and I left a copy for you. So here, you just take these two functions, add together. What is f of x minus g of x means you're subtracting. You just need to be careful when it comes to subtractions. Make sure you put a parenthesis first, and then bring the negative and distribute. So when you do that, you have this answer. F gx means you multiply these two functions. And you don't have to multiply this out. So you could just leave it like this, means two parentheses multiplied by each other. But normally depend on what answer you have on WebAssign. If the WebAssign wants you to simplify, then you go a little bit further here. See, so you either end here or you continue to come up with a final result based on what they expect you to do on WebAssign. And so some of the problem with WebAssign, if you see a statement say read, means you could go ahead and read the example first before you actually do the problems. This is in case you're dividing. You cannot simplify anything here, right? You just write it like that. And then the second example is very similar. You add, subtract, consider the parentheses first. Multiplications, you distribute. Divisions. But here they also ask you about the domain. What is the domain of a fractions? You know, when you have a function like a fractions like that, let's say you have this type of function here. You have y equal x plus 1. When we say domain, means we're talking about the x, and y is the range. Now, if we ask you what is the domain, means this, can you substitute any number for x? Whether it's a positive, negative, and 0, and you always have a value? Yes. If you take any number, whether it's positive, negative, and 0, and substitute here, you always have a value for y. So to answer the question for this one, you say domain is all real numbers. Means you could substitute any numbers all the way from minus infinity to positive infinity. Just in case of fraction, let's say you have equations like this. I cannot do the same thing for these problems. Why? Because you could substitute any number. Except -1. You cannot substitute, you cannot substitute -1 here. Because if you put -1, then what's the y value? 5/0, which is undefined. So there is an exception here for the domain. You just say domain is all real number except -1. So when you have a fraction and there is a variable at the denominator, to find what number must be excluded, always take the denominator, set it equal to 0 to see what number would make the denominator 0, which is in this case is -1. Okay, so that's the case here. What number would make 4 minus x 0? 4. So domain is all numbers except 4. And you write it like this. On the number line, you go all the way from minus infinity to 4. When you don't put a bracket, it means you cannot be 4. You get close to 4, but not 4. And 4 to infinity. So on the number line, 4 must be excluded. Okay, so that's the way to do it. And that's how you could find the domain. Okay, so now we go to the next. Same thing. First you add them, subtract them, multiply, divide, and then at the end, the denominator is 4x minus 5. You take 4x minus 5, set it equal to 0 to see what number must be excluded, 5 over 4. You could substitute any number except 5 over 4. That's the domain. Next, domain. Now, this time we talk about the fraction has a radical 4 minus x. When you want to solve this equation, you raise it to the second power, then x is 4. Again, you could substitute any number except 4. Now, this is a case that when you find f plus g, when you add these two, you need to take the 3 and put in the final result. See, I'll take f of x and g of x and add first. Then 3, you have to take a 3 and put in the final result. So you're going to put a 3 here for the x. So f plus g of 3 means that. Same thing here. What is f minus g of 0? Means subtract these two first. F of x minus g of x. Subtract that, and then on the final outcome here, put 0. This is kind of different because they ask you to find f of x minus g of x, okay? Now, instead of putting a number for x, it doesn't have to be a number. It could be anything. They're asking you to put the letter of 2t. So it doesn't matter whether you have a number or you have a letter. What you have here, you get to take it and substitute for x. And then because of these two, you have to raise it to power of 2. See? That's the outcome. They want you to multiply these two first. See, right at this here, you don't have to multiply this because you need to put that 4 in the x for the x anyway. So it's easier to just take the 4 and substitute here for the x rather than multiply this out and simplify. They want you to divide, and in the final result, which this is f of x divided by g of x, right? Then take the 4 and substitute. So take f of x divided by g of x, and then put 4 for the x. Take f of x divided by g of x, and put -1 in the result. So I'll put that one here. So take f of x and g of x, divide, and then put -1 into this. That gives you this value, right? So you put that one here. Minus g of 5. G of 5 means go to the g function here, put a 5 here for the x. I'll show you here. Now, number 11, they want you to use graphing calculator. You could also use your hand too, but they want you to graph. Now, if I want to use the hand calculation, how do I graph half of x? Just come up with two arbitrary numbers. Like when I put 2 here, y is 1. When you put 4 is 2. Using these 2 points, you could graph this one, you could graph that, but they want you to use the same x and y axis to do that. Thirteen is very similar to that. Let me see what problem 13 is here. See, use graphing utility to graph f of x equal 5x plus 2 and g of x is that. And then answer the questions, what happened here. So what you do is you just go here. So on the, first you put your value here, see? Put both functions in the utility if you want, graphing utility, and then go ahead and graph it. And you see that. And based on the graph, you could say if you go beyond 2, then the y value is higher negative value. So that would impact it, okay? So you can go to here. And before you graph it, make sure that all these are for, so make sure the plots is on. Make sure the plots is on for that. Okay. Now, number 14. Now these are different. FOG. This is not. See, we had FOG. That means f of x times g of x. But FOG is different. This means f of g, like gx. They call it composite functions. Means you take one function and insert into the second one. So I have these two functions. F of g, FOG means, first you write it like that. F of gx. So FOG means you got to take this g and insert into the f, okay? So that means f of gx. What is gx? Gx is x minus 2. So instead of gx, you put x. Now, f of this means take the whole thing and substitute for the x. Example, let's say f of x is x2. What is f of 3? F of 3 means take the 3 and substitute here for the x. So it would be 9. What does f of minus 1 means? Take minus 1, substitute for the x. What is f of 2t means? It doesn't matter what you have in the parentheses, that would be substituted for the x. So it would be 2t to the power of 2 is 4t2. What is f of x plus 1 means? Take x plus 1 and substitute for the x. What does f of gx means? Means take whatever gx is, which in this case is x minus 2, right? And take that and substitute for the x. So that would be x minus 2 to the power of 2. That's what fg of x means. But g of f of x is completely opposite. What is g of fx means? Fx is x2. Now they're asking you to take go to the G functions, go to the G function, which is here, and instead of X, put this X2, put it there, okay? So that's what you see here. So G of OF means G of f of x. Take f of x, which is x2, and insert it into the x here. GOG means what? G of x means take G of x, which is x minus 2, and put it inside of the G of x again. Put it here. What is G of x? That. Take it and substitute for the x here. See? The same thing. GOF. Take f of x, which is this, the whole thing. Take the whole thing and then put it for the x here. GOG, G of x. Take G of x and insert into the G again. Same thing, but here they ask you to find the domain of each, okay? One other thing is, you know, when you deal with the fractions, let's say I have a I'm sorry, radical. Let's say you have something like this. Can you substitute any number for the x? You remember the x was domain, right? Can you substitute any number for the x and always find the value for the range? Not every number. There are some numbers. What if I put -3? What do you get? Y is radical -3 plus 1. What is radical negative? Undefined. So what about -2? Undefined. So with the radical, you have to be careful. What you have on the radical always has to be positive. So x plus 1 has to be greater than or equal to 0. You have to solve this inequality, which what means what? X always has to be greater than -1. And you want to substitute a number, make sure your number is -1 and greater. So for any radical problems, what you have under the radical, you have to take that and set it greater than or equal to 0. That's how to find the domain of the radical. We take this, x plus 4 greater than 0. It doesn't matter what the value of x is, positive, negative, 0, you always have the y value. Same thing, because of the power of 2, it doesn't matter if x is positive or negative. Since you raise it to power of 2, the outcome is always positive. So under the radical is always positive. This one, you gotta be careful, okay? Look, GOF, the final answer is this, correct? But when you want to find the domain, you gotta be careful. Don't use this, because in which case radical, when you take radical x plus 4 and raise it to power of 2, it is true, which is x plus 4, just in case x is greater than -4. So when it comes to the final answer of the radical, pay attention to this one. Because domain means it doesn't matter whether you put it here or there, it has to work, but it doesn't work here. So x has to be greater than -4 in order to find the domain. Although the final answer is like this, but again, when you substitute a number here or there, should work in either one, but it doesn't work here unless that number is greater than -4. So you have the same thing in these problems. See here? We understand that FOG is x plus 1, but hey, it was radical x to power of 2. Radical x to power of 2 is x if x is positive. See, if x is positive, otherwise you couldn't do that. Here it doesn't matter because it's power of 2. And this is for absolute value. For absolute value, it doesn't matter. See, in all cases is not there. So one of the exception of the domain is radical and also fractions, these two. Again, that means this. F plus G of 0 means this is, you have to find it through the graph, okay? You see the graph 19. See on this graph, what is f of 0? F of 0 means when x is 0, what is the value of y? So you go to, this is fx, right? When x is 0, what's the value of y? 4. G of 0 means go to g function and see if x is 0, what is the value of y? See, this is a g function. When x is 0, what is the value of y? 4. So now you put those two here, then the answer is 8. F of 3 divided by g of 3. We have to find each separate. What is f of 3? F of 3 means go to f functions and for x equal 3, find your value of y. This is the f functions. When x is 3, what is the value of y? 2. G of 3 means go to g function and for x equal 3, find a y. Go to g function and for x equal 3, find your y, which is 1. So you take these two and put it here to find your number, okay? 20, it's very similar to that. And 21, 22 is just, you have to find, you know, they give you a final result. They say, what was each function that you, when you inserted, you come up with that one? Okay, so those functions are x2 and 5x plus 8, right? They ask you to find those two functions. So what is f of gx? F of gx means take this one and insert into f. Take this and insert into that. That's why you have this. So they want you to find those two functions. We come up with these answers. It's like they give you the answers. They want you to, they give you the composite function. They want you to find each of those values. Okay? So that would be end of this section.